This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Most AI tools at work don't know anything about you. Every time, you're stuck re-explaining your projects, your team, what actually matters. Slack just fixed that. The all-new Slack bot is a personal AI agent built into Slack, and it starts with your context, your messages, files, and channels. Translation, an AI that already knows how you work. Check it out at slack.com. Yeah. OpenAI's new GPT-5.6 Sol is amazing and the best and most practical AI model in the world right now. But they actually just pulled off one of the smartest naming tricks I've seen in a while. See, they took the popular agentic coding platform Codex, softened the edges, got rid of that scary word code, and just repackaged it as ChatGPT Work, the super app. But everyone is rightfully paying attention to the new model itself, GPT 5.6 Sol, OpenAI's flagship release built for longer, cheaper, and more reliable execution of all type of work outputs. This sounds like one launch of two related products, but it's really a model story, a platform story, and a competitive story all wrapped up in one. And there's some details that I think people are overlooking. So that's exactly what we're going to be tackling today on Everyday AI. So here is the big picture. OpenAI just released their new 5.6 models. Yeah, GPT 5.6 models. There's multiple, and a product they're calling ChatGPT Work, or the super app. So the models themselves, well, by benchmarks and my limited use so far, look and feel like real upgrades built for long-running, hands-off professional work. So ChatGPT Work, because you're going to be hearing me say work and the words ChatGPT Work a lot. It's just kind of repackaging of some of the tools you didn't know you had inside of ChatGPT. And in case you did miss it, it's been a very busy 36 hours for OpenAI, because not only did they come out with probably now the best model in the world, the best harness and making it more accessible for more people, but they also brought what I think could be more impactful in the long run. 2 days ago, my gosh, time's flying by, the new GPT Live model, which brings that duplex two-way voice interaction. But the big thing is GPT 5.6. So on today's show, you're going to learn why ChatGPT Work on the web is mostly just pretty packaging and where the real upgrade actually lives. I'm going to tell you 5 overlooked features that people aren't really focusing on, and they probably should, including the full merge super app and the quiet death of Atlas. But don't worry, it's a good thing. And I'm going to give you my hot take: OpenAI's positioning play, and why I think Anthropic should be very nervous of a model that's not GPT 5.6 Sol. Yeah, a different OpenAI model is going to cause Anthropic headaches. Let's get into it. Welcome to Everyday AI. If you're new here, my name is Jordan Wilson, and do this every day. It's for you. It's your daily live stream, podcast, and free daily newsletter, unedited, unscripted, helping business leaders like you and me keep up with the AI updates. I go through sleep deprivation, so you don't have to. You get to benefit from just the good stuff to grow your company and your career. So it starts here, but make sure you go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping all of my random ramblings into the too long didn't listen version. So make sure you go do that and check out everything else that's happening in the world of AI in our newsletter. All right, so let's get to it. We're talking about ChatGPT Work, the new GPT 5.6 Sol. I'm going to tell you what's new, 5 overlooked features, and 1 hot take. So GPT 5.6 Sol. if you missed the boat, or maybe you've been on a long vacation and haven't listened to the podcast in 2 weeks, OpenAI already announced this. This wasn't new. We knew it was coming. They actually announced it about 2 weeks ago, but they had to work with the federal government. Now that we have kind of the permission slip, way of doing AI here in the US because of Anthropic. But here it is, brand new model. But the difference is, well, it is actually maybe a little more confusing in the long run, because before we just had things like GPT 5.5, right? And then you had different levels of reasoning and all that. So now we still have the different levels of reasoning. We still have the number, the 5.6, but now we also have Sol, which is the big model. We have Terra, which is the medium model. And then we have Luna, right? So sun, earth, moon, which is great. And I think that that's going to carry on. So let's talk a little bit about the new model. And this is from OpenAI's release. So they said, we're launching the GPT-5.6 family of models for general availability following our limited preview. Our new flagship Sol alongside Terra, a balanced model for everyday work, and Luna, our most cost-efficient model. GPT-5.6 Sol sets a new standard for both intelligence and efficiency, achieving state-of-the-art results across coding, knowledge work, cybersecurity, and science, while outperforming previous and competing frontier models with fewer tokens and at a lower estimated cost. The result is stronger performance per dollar, more successful work for the same spend, or comparable results at a lower total cost. We also introduce a new way to accelerate the most demanding work. Ultra is our highest capability setting, coordinating multiple agents across parallel work streams to finish complex tasks faster. Stronger computer use and design judgment make GPT-5.6 Sol our most polished collaborator yet, helping it inspect, refine, and deliver ready-to-use results. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about GPT-5.6 Sol. I'm going to do a little bit comparison, not too much on this show, but obviously Fable 5, right? We have to talk about those two models together when we go over the benchmarks here in a couple of minutes. But I want to quickly tell you a little bit about the other big release. So we knew GPT-5.6 Sol was coming out yesterday on Thursday. What we didn't necessarily know is, well, we were essentially getting the super app, right? Internally, they've kind of saying it's the merge, but this is the super app. So this is kind of the combination of ChatGPT, Codex, which has been on fire the last 5 months, and the Atlas browser. So the Atlas browser is no more. Now, Codex is ChatGPT and ChatGPT is Codex. It's actually both an amazing play, just simply calling it ChatGPT Work, but also kind of confusing with how it rolled out, because if you go download Codex or if you go update Codex, now it says, ChatGPT, but you can change it. You can say, hey, I want it to be the Codex icon and still call it Codex, but it's the same thing, right? But kind of how OpenAI put their post out about ChatGPT Work. They said, powered by GPT-5.6, ChatGPT Work brings together context from your team's tools to turn scattered notes, drafts, and ideas into finished work, and keeps projects moving while you stay in control. They say ChatGPT Work gathers context, plans the approach, and takes action across your tools, files, and desktop apps to create polished spreadsheets, docs, and slides. ChatGPT can turn context from your tools and files into polished documents, presentations, and analysis to better follow your templates and preferred formats. And then they say sites. Yeah. Updates on sites, and I'm going to share about that more in a minute. Sites let you turn ideas, plans, and data into interactive websites and web apps that are easy to share with your team, create dashboards, project trackers, launch calendars, prototypes, reports, and more, and keep them up to date as information changes. So then talking about the unified plugins, they say with more than 1,400 plugins available, ChatGPT can pull context from the tools and workflows you already use to help move projects forward. They say create one-time recurring tasks, monitor updates, and check progress from your phone while you're away from your desk. And I'm going to be talking about those ChatGPT remote updates because I think they're really good. Then the new side-by-side in ChatGPT, which I like. It's the new built-in browser experience in the ChatGPT desktop app. Makes it easier to work across your tools, files, and accounts with support for multiple tabs and richer agentic workflows. And I'm going to share at the end some of my tips on the best way to do that, because that's, for me, the biggest unlock. A very small piece of this is the biggest unlock. And then review the approach before work begins. In plan mode, ChatGPT gathers context, asks questions, and creates a step-by-step plan. You can suggest changes or approve the plan to start the work. All right. So let me translate all of that marketing speak. It's just Codex. That's it. There's really nothing new. So I don't know if most people remember this, but OpenAI added a feature about 2 weeks ago, or sorry, about 2 months ago. Essentially, it allowed you to choose how you wanted Codex to display. So you could either have a more technical display or something they just called for everyday work. So you could just choose how much technical detail Codex showed when it was working. So did you want to see all the tokens spinning and all the Pythons calling and all the, tools spinning off the shelf, right? If so, you would choose the coding approach, which is technically now Codex. If you just wanted a more minimalistic and you didn't really care about what was going on under the hood, well, that's now just called ChatGPT Work. I spent so much time and I'm like, this can't be true, both on the web, because they did the same thing on the web. On the web, now you have ChatGPT, and there's a toggle for chat and a toggle for work. And, on the web, at least, ChatGPT Work looks a little different. There's technically no real new functionality aside from being powered by the new model. The plugins are unified, but there's no new anything, right? So you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. What's new here? All this is, which is smart. Don't get me wrong, right? I just was like, okay, I just, read the blog post 6 times, watched every single video that OpenAI put out, played with every feature. And I'm like, oh, it's literally the same. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's smart what OpenAI did here. Because if I'm being honest, even power users of ChatGPT, I could go in, show them things, and then people would be like, wait, what? Like, where'd you find that setting, right? There's literally be some things that were some of the best parts of ChatGPT that you couldn't even find, right? You had to go into like a setting like 4 or 5 rows in, and it's like, oh my gosh, you can do that in ChatGPT. It's like, yeah, you can't. Like even like scheduled tasks, they took that away for a couple of months, but you could still access it via a URL or by clicking like 4 or 5 links deep inside of a setting panel. So you're going to probably be hearing a lot of chatter about the new ChatGPT Work. I do think it's smart. So on the web, it's just some more, it does look like more Codex on the web, but you don't really have the Codex features per se. But on the desktop, it's just Codex. ChatGPT Work is Codex, and you can choose to call it ChatGPT or call it Codex, but you will have a kind of a switcher at the top, and you can switch between ChatGPT Work and ChatGPT Codex, but nothing really changes. But like I said, I think it's smart. And here's the play. It still baffled me how many smart people I've talked to over the last 5 or 6 months about Codex, right? Because on one hand, yes, it is an extremely powerful agentic platform that you can automate your life, you can code, you can build things, right? And that's intimidating for people, right? And I've been saying this on the show, I've been, Captain Codex since February, and it absolutely crushes every competitor, and it's not even close. It's way better than Claude Desktop, Claude Code, Claude Cowork. It's better than Cursor. I think Cursor is probably in second place. It's better than Anti-Gravity Gemini. It is the best desktop AI app, and it is not even close. But the problem is the word Codex, right? People said, oh, I'm not a coder, right? Yeah, I've had so many recent conversations, people who are even somewhat technical, but they're not coders. And they're like, oh, I can't use Codex. And I'm like, you absolutely have to. So from that aspect, it's a very smart play. They literally just slapped the word work on, didn't really change anything, just shows fewer details, but that's it. All right. So don't get confused when you're like, what's this new ChatGPT Work? It's really nothing new. All right. So yeah, here on my screen, I have the ChatGPT Work on the web. Just looks kind of like Codex Lite, but it doesn't really do anything new or different that you couldn't previously do on the web inside of ChatGPT. So yeah, the web version just bundles agent work, deep research projects, connected apps. So it just brought some of the more technically advanced features, the ones that I used all the time, and it kind of gave it its own dedicated panel in the work. You can still do all those things in the normal chat panel. It just, makes the chat panel maybe a little bit easier and less intimidating with, fewer interfaces. And then the work panel just makes it easier. And then it suggests different things. All right. And then, well, there's one new thing. There's a nice little toggle, right, inside the chat GPT desktop app. Yeah, there's nothing really new there. But Atlas is built in. Sorry, I take that back. Atlas is now built into the browser, and it is really good. It is improved, and I'm going to give you here in a couple of minutes when I go over my 5 overlooked features. One of them is going to hopefully, I think, change the way a lot of people work. All right, so more on GPT-5.6, got to get in the benchmarks, the comparisons, all that, but I need a quick water break, and we have to quickly hear a word from our partners.
Here's what most AI tools still can't do: work outside their own little box. The all-new Slack bot just changed that. It's your AI teammate inside Slack, and now it can read, write, and act across the other apps your team already uses. No more tool switching, no more re-explaining yourself every time you open a new tab. One ops team at Engine says the summary feature alone saves them 15 to 20 minutes a use. See what Slackbot can do at slack.com.
All right, so a little bit more on the new models. So GPT-5.6, here's the basics. There's 3 models: Sol, Terra, Luna. Sol is the flagship. It is aimed at the heavy users: coding, knowledge work, cybersecurity, and science. If you are someone that's using AI for 3, 5, 6, 12 hours a day, you're probably going to want to use Sol because you will be able to take advantage of those full capabilities. We always talk about the capability gap, right? If you're doing lighter work, maybe you can use Terra, right? That is the more everyday work at a lower cost. And then Luna is the fastest, cheapest tier. So yeah, that's our new 3 naming tier. And then on top of that, you have Sol Ultra as well. So let's look at that. So with Sol, so we're going to get into the benchmarks here. It did extremely well. So even on a newer benchmark, which I really like, if you've heard of Humanity's Last Exam, it's essentially all these questions that are not in training data. So there's a similar one called Agent's Last Exam, and it's been one of the more popular and trending benchmarks of 2026, and it just crushed the competition. So, and even if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't need agents, I'm not a coder. Yes, you do. And yes, you will. You just don't know it yet. And I'm being dead serious, right? The future of work, if you are a knowledge worker sitting in front of a computer, you are an agent orchestrator. It's how I've been doing my work since February, since Codex came out. Constantly providing a lot of feedback on the front end, keeping an eye on your agents, seeing what they return you. That's your work. You polish it a little bit, but you're able to get 4, 5, 6, 10 times done that of the type of work that you would normally do. And, unlocking a whole new skill set that you never thought you could do. But the company's core pitch here is just performance per dollar. And we're going to get into that in some of the charts. And then there is technically a tier-ish on top of Sol, and that's Sol Ultra. And that's just when they run essentially 4 kind of sub agents in parallel, all of the highest setting, and you kind of get the best of the best. So Ultra does kind of coordinate those 4 agents in parallel by default to finish those demanding tasks faster. We've gone over pricing before, but Sol is $5 input and $30 per output for million tokens. So that's just if you're paying on the API side, right? So if if you have a ChatGPT subscription, FYI, that now means you have a ChatGPT Work or a Codex subscription. It's the same thing. It shares those limits. So obviously you're not having to worry about that. But the pricing is extremely important. And then obviously the cheaper per task can still drain plans quickly. So, if you are using the Sol Ultra, that's going to eat things away. All right, let's talk a little bit about some benchmarks. We're not going to go too deep into it, but it's important to talk about. So I think probably the best single source for benchmarks is artificial analysis. So it is conglomerate. It just brings in, different benchmarks all at once. So it averages all these different benchmarks. So it's one of the best sources to look at. So GPT-5.6 Sol Max, pretty much on par with Claude Fable 5. It's a 1 point difference, which is pretty minuscule, right? I'd say power users can start noticing at about a 3 point difference. Average users, maybe like a 6 point difference, and they're not going to tell the difference. But if you are a heavy user, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between a 59 and a 60 on artificial analysis intelligence index. That means they are essentially 1A and 1AAB. It's not 1A and 1B, it's 1A and 1AAB. But that's just on the artificial analysis intelligence benchmark. Here's where it gets interesting. They have 3 main benchmarks. I usually just talk about the intelligence index because that brings a little bit of everything. But in this case, when we're talking about knowledge work becoming more and more agentic, I think that's actually when the other 2 artificial analysis benchmarks become more important. And that is their artificial analysis coding index, which GPT-5.6 Sol beats Fable 5. All right, so it beats it on coding. And on the agentic index, 5.5 also beats it. So essentially, I would argue by most standards, that would mean that GPT-5.6 Sol is better. I mean, we'll see when all the benchmarks come out in the LM arena. So what do humans prefer, right? And, OpenAI has said they're working on front end design. I know so much, which I never understood, right? Because so much of like vibes that are out there for models, it's always like, okay, I created this video game and like, look at how good it looks. It's like, okay, well, maybe like what 0.001% of the world uses models for that, right? I use models for knowledge work. I use models for personalizing research, carrying my context over from different apps, building decks, building little sites that I can share, right? Helping me grow my business, right? I'm not creating 3JS worlds. I do a little bit of design things, maybe for some of the apps that I do build. But, I think it's important to look at these 3 benchmarks in tandem. But the one that is the most telling, and we're going to get to this in a little bit more, is the price. So for artificial analysis, this is essentially the cost per intelligence, right? Because these models can all get the tasks done, but, well, how much does it cost? And right now, GPT-5.6, I will argue, is a slightly better model. If you look at all these, the 3 different artificial analysis indexes that are the most important, they're 1 point behind on one, winning the other 2, but they're doing it at, $1 per task, $1.04 versus Fable 5, $2.75. Yeah. Anthropic. All right. So we went over ChatGPT Work. We went over Codex. Now I'm going to give you the 5 overlooked features and my 1 hot take. All right. Overlooked feature number 1, even though OpenAI didn't say it out loud, this is the super app, right? I think there are a lot of super app, rah-rah back in like March, April, May. And at the time, OpenAI said, well, Codex is the super app, right? They said, we're building it in disguise, but this is it. But it's bringing together chat, work, Codex, browser, files, and actions. And if you know absolutely nothing about Codex, right? Or why does it matter? Why do I need a desktop, something running on my desktop versus something, that I can just do in the cloud, right? If ChatGPT has this new ChatGPT Work on the web, why would I ever use Codex? Well, the main reason is it can access your local system. So it can use your entire computer. It can use your browser, right? It can access, read and write all of your local files. So those are, three big advantages. And, there's a little bit more that you can do with scheduling and things like that. If you have a machine like I do that just stays on, my poor Mac Studio, I don't think it's taken a nap since I got it, right? So I have a lot of things that are scheduled, loops, goals, heartbeats, all these things. There's a little bit more technical capabilities that you can do with the desktop app, but it is now all one. There's some syncing issues, FYI, and I'll probably reach out to OpenAI about it. I don't know if they're fully aware, because as an example, some things change names, right? So if you were using Codex before, there was a thing called chats. Now there's no Codex chats. Codex chats are now tasks. So they could be called Codex tasks, or they could be called ChatGPT Work tasks anyways, but there's a new chats panel, and that brings in your chats from ChatGPT. But right now, at least, only chats from the chat tab inside ChatGPT are syncing, and not the chats from the work tab inside ChatGPT. Yeah, confusing, right? So there are some things that, the super app and bringing all this together in one cohesive ball. I think that there's a couple of things that the team is probably going to tighten up. But I mean, first iteration, it is really, really good. All right. The other thing, small footnote, sites. All right. ChatGPT sites rolling out to all paid plans. All right. I think might be some geography restrictions at first, but rolling out to all paid plans. And this is important. Also, there's public publishing, live URLs, and it's on ChatGPT on the web, not just Codex. So we are starting to see, a little bit more feature parity, certain, like a good example is ChatGPT sites used to only be on Codex. So, well, now that's also on ChatGPT on the web as well. So here's why this is important, because before, sites was number one, only available on Codex. So now it's available on the web as well. But it's also available for all paid plans. Before, it was just for team plans. If I'm being honest, like it was one of the reasons that I still was holding on to my team plan, even though I'm mainly the only person that uses it, was for ChatGPT sites. I really like it. But on my $200 a month pro plan, it's like I wanted to be able to use sites. Now I can. So if you have a paid plan, ChatGPT sites is great. It's like a lovable light, right? So I did a full episode on it a couple of weeks ago. Think of it like this. Think of how many versions of Dex that you have, right? There's 10 different versions on 10 different people's machines, V1, V3, V4 final. Oh, did we have edits on this one, right? You probably waste hundreds of hours a year just dealing with who has that file, right? ChatGPT sites can just get rid of that because it's just one source of truth. And anytime one person updates it, it's updated everywhere. So you can build full on, databases, dashboards, little apps that your team can use, or just decks and websites to keep track of anything type of work. So it's nice that it's rolling out to all plans and available on the web. Next, ChatGPT Mobile got a huge update. Now you can manage plugins from ChatGPT app. You can see and manage all of your scheduled tasks. So that's great. But also, they changed the name. So you used to open up the ChatGPT app and it would say Codex, and then you could essentially control your any physical machine that was running Codex. So now it's just called Remote, which I kind of light, right? So they're not slapping the name Codex everywhere and confusing people. And if you see remote, you're like, cool, even if you're a non-technical person. And now all of a sudden you're like, wait, I can use the ChatGPT app, which, OpenAI has like 1 billion weekly active users, and everyone knows the ChatGPT app. And then they see this thing called remote, and they're like, oh, I can, control my desktop if I have the ChatGPT Work app. Wow, great. So again, not really new functionality there. It's just cleaned up, and it does work a little bit better, but actually no, there is new functionality because you have more control over plugins and scheduled tasks on the actual on the actual remote section of the ChatGPT app. All right, number 4, Atlas is technically gone. So OpenAI's browser experiment, it is no more, but it's for the best because now this is going to sound small. All right, but 2 big updates to the browser, formerly known as Atlas, that is now just baked into the super app, right? So Codex had always had a browser, but it was a singular browser, and it didn't have all the normal browser capabilities. Like you couldn't open multiple tabs, and it didn't keep your saved passwords. I actually spent like 1.8 billion tokens building I forgot what I called it. I think I just called it like Codex Vault. But I essentially built an app that would save all of my passwords so I could run, certain things agentically that required you to log in because, the Codex browser, couldn't log into things without saved passwords. So that is available now, and you can import from any of your Chrome profiles because the browser is based on Chromium like Atlas was. So it supports cookies to keep you logged in, and it'll support passwords. So I was playing around with it a little bit because it was a little finicky to actually get computer use to click log in because some websites, depending on how they're set up, the actual browser control can log you in. So it'll pull up your saved websites, your saved credentials, right? Just like in Chrome, if you sign into something and you've saved your password in Chrome, it'll be there and you just have to click log in. So I had to toy around with it a little bit. I might just, if I can refine it, I just might save it as a skill and, put it in our newsletter or on our website because it is a little finicky now. I'm sure they'll get it fixed, but this is the big unlock here, y'all. And here's why. Yes, there's connectors and plugins and MCPs and all these things, right? But I think for knowledge work, so much of what we do is going to all of these different websites that don't have MCP and they don't have direct connectors, right? So in my example, our podcast is hosted on Buzzsprout, which is an older host. They don't have any AI anything. I spend so much time, going from this program, downloading this, uploading this file here. I clean the audio, then I bring it in, get the timestamps, and it's like 5 different programs. Well, now I can just fully automate that completely because Codex can open multiple tabs at once, and it can save the passwords because, it does save them. It had previously saved them for a certain amount of time, but every once in a while, it just kicks you out like any normal, SaaS program would. So now with the cookies and the saved passwords, huge in terms of the new knowledge work that you can do on a schedule. Think of all those monotonous tasks. You have to go log in, click this thing 12 times. You're like, why am I doing this? Right? Why, even if you're a high paid executive, you're like, I just every single day I have 45 minutes of things that, a monkey could do, right? I just go here, click this, wait for it to load, 3 minutes. Oops, got distracted. Click this, export, download, right? You don't have to do any of that anymore. It's amazing. All right. And then last but not least, computer use is much faster. It is faster. It is better. And it has this real cool new thing. It's this picture in picture. So when computer use is happening, you can see, if you've ever seen picture in picture on your TV, it's just right there in Codex, or if you decide to call your Codex ChatGPT Work. So you can see what's happening right there in Codex. Oh, another thing that I didn't mention, which I should have mentioned on number 4 with Atlas, related to this and related to this super app. And I don't even think OpenAI announced this, and I didn't see anyone else talk about it, but in the Chrome extension, because you can also from Codex not just control your computer, not just control the built-in browser, but you can also control a Chrome browser, which is a little different. All right. But they actually have a Chrome extension, and there's an update in the Chrome extension where you can have a side panel in Chrome and you can see what is being worked on your desktop, which is really cool. So, if I have a window open, which is actually unlocks a lot, because normally on my setup, right, I have two screens. One screen is just full, full Codex, and then I'll have, probably a full Claude desktop. And then I have to swap between them because I'm like, oh, okay. And I know, Codex has the little pets and they say, all right, your thing's ready, but I'm still like having to always keep an eye on that. So having a sidebar in Chrome and I can see what Codex is working on and track it live, that's been like a small little thing. And I'm like, wait, why didn't they talk about this? This is huge, especially if you're like me and you're giving, agents long running tasks. At any point I might have, 5 to 20 different threads running. And it's like, I don't want to always have to check in on them. And sometimes the little Codex pet for me is a little distracting. And I'm always in a Chrome browser. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can just have that going and work with it right there. Actually amazing. All right. So that is the 5 overlooked features. And let me end with this hot take. For those of you that stuck around, Anthropic's in trouble. They are in trouble. If they do not immediately pivot, it's not going to look good. All right. And here's the thing. Yeah, Anthropic is scared. And they should be, right? And this is great because it's going to drive competition. Anthropic did something that I don't think they've ever done. Right after this announcement, and this is how I know Anthropic is in huge, huge trouble. They reset weekly limits, which I don't think they've ever done, except one time when they made a big mistake. There's this big miscommunication. I think they might have reset 5-hour limits, not weekly limits. That's something, if you use Codex, like we've been spoiled, right? Tebow over there at OpenAI, always resetting your weekly limits. Anthropic did this. They never do it. And they did it right when OpenAI announced something. And that to me is like, they know they're scared and they know I'm not going to make projections, but I'll make a projection. I'd say it's very, very safe to say that yesterday they lost probably 8 figures in revenue, I would guess. And I will continue to say that until they make a change, they're going to be losing 8 figures of revenue every single day, maybe more. They're going to be losing a lot of money if they do not pivot immediately. So I even heard some people say, and I'm not going to say this, right? People are like, oh, Fable 5 is dead. It's not dead. It's still, a top tier model, and there's still going to be some people out there paying for it. But I would absolutely not pay a dime for Fable 5. And Anthropic, they said, oh, we're going to, extend Fable 5 in subscriptions through July 12th. Well, if they don't extend it past that, they're going to lose subscribers. But the majority of Anthropic's business comes from 2 main things. It comes from coding via the API, right? And up until 5.6 Sol, they had a sizable lead, right? Fable 5 had a sizable lead over 5.5 from GPT. And, Google, we'll see what happens. But here's the thing. I don't think Anthropic is worried about GPT-5.6 Sol. They are worried about GPT-5.6 Terra. Okay, here's why. So Anthropic makes money from coding. Yes, they have co-work. Yes, that's popular. They make their money from coding. They sell tokens at an extreme premium. All right. Looking at the artificial analysis coding index, and that takes into account a lot of the popular coding benchmarks. Sol, GPT-5.6 Sol is in first place. But guess who's in second place? GPT-5.6 Terra, the medium model. It is better than the big bad Fable, the one that we had to, have a government Anthropic fight, the one that, Anthropic had been, saying this thing's too dangerous. They were hyping it up for 3 months. And now we have this, permission slip AI in the US because of Anthropic overhyping Fable and Mythos. Okay. The medium model is eating Fable 5's lunch. And why are they eating it? Not just because it's incrementally better at coding. It is more than 5 times cheaper, according to artificial analysis. 5 times cheaper to do the same tasks versus Fable 5. Yeah. So what I said on the Twitter machine, I said Anthropic has like a week or two until enterprises start catching up, because that's how long it takes for even the decision makers that are spending multiple millions of dollars, sometimes a month, on these products. And yes, there's vendor lock-in, but any company that's up for, if they signed a 1-year deal with Anthropic, there's always companies rolling. They're going to churn. There's zero reason for any company right now to be paying for Anthropic. Zero. Because of what OpenAI just did. They undercut on price. They over-delivered on performance. And if Anthropic doesn't change Fable 5 pricing, it is DOA. It's done. So they've got to either quickly release Fable 5.1 so they can, knock down the pricing on Fable 5, or I do think that they will be bleeding 5 figures potentially daily, right? So not just from people going over on contract renewals, but just on the API side. It's going to be interesting to look at these third-party sites like OpenRouter that track, third-party token usage, because I would assume you're going to see the OpenAI share go up exponentially, and you're going to see people that were using, at least for Fable, go down, Opus go down, because why would you use Opus now when Terra is cheaper? So a big portion of Anthropic's revenue just got cut off at the knees. And if nothing else, this is just fun for us, right? We get to watch, but that means we're going to get, number one, a better model from Anthropic sooner rather than later. They have to, and they're going to have to cut their prices and or extend and keep Fable 5 in subscriptions. There's really no other option, right? Because they can't just keep bleeding money, because they're going to be bleeding money. All right, so that's it. Now you know ChatGPT Work, GPT-5.6 Sol, what's new, the 5 overlooked features, and my 1 hot take. I hope this was helpful. If so, please go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. Thanks. We'll see you, not tomorrow, but Monday and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
Here's the thing about AI at work. You can't use what you don't trust. The all-new Slackbot runs inside Slack's security boundary, only sees what you've already allowed it to see, and never trains on your data. Personal AI agent with the trust to actually put it to work. Slackbot from Slack. Learn more at slack.com.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.